Okay, roles of political parties. For those of you who are clamoring for more at-home videos, today is your day. So we are still talking in the black box model about the methods that people are connected to the government. We've talked about interest groups, talked about elections, campaigns, public opinion, and the media. The last method are political parties. And our essential question, shockingly, is how well are political parties performing their function of connecting citizens to government? I'll be expecting you to be familiar with these 5 roles, which I shall briefly explain to you now. The first role, recruiting and nominating candidates. So we talked about how a fair nomination process is essential to a reasonable election, because if the people on the ballot are not well chosen, then the election is no fun, because you're choosing only from people, say, boss tweet picked. Think of the following situation. If I want to run for political office in Lancaster County, I have to be a Republican. Republicans win all the countywide offices. What stops somebody, say like me, not your typical Republican, from walking around Lancaster County? I got a pretty wife, I got nice looking kids, I kiss some babies, I tell people, Udell, Republican, running for it, and when I get into office, I just start behaving like a Democrat. The media doesn't cover it that closely, most people don't pay attention. The answer is, I may not call myself a Republican unless the Republican Party nominates me. And part of their job is making sure that the people who end up on the ballot actually have the beliefs and stances of the party. So when your typical Lancaster County voter walks in and doesn't pay attention to every single race and chooses the R next to people's name for Republican, if the party has done their job, they will in fact get someone who really stands for Republican beliefs. And that's an important role. They also, believe it or not, a lot of offices go uncontested in the United States. So the party would reach out, whether it's to get someone to run for school board, to get someone to run for state representative. Obviously they don't have to recruit people to run for president and Senate usually, but even into the House of Representatives sometimes they do have a hard time finding people. Parties also organize and run elections. Oh, part of that nomination process also, is to narrow down the list of candidates so you don't end up with a list of candidates, people voting 300 or 400 people, or even 20 or 30 people, so that they're narrowing it down. Organizing and running elections. Parties are another interesting organization in the United States. They're private groups, but they often work with the government directly. So we've said this before, the primary elections are for the party, but the government's paying for the election. So you have this sort of unusual combination of private-public hybrid. So the primary calendar that we talked about, which state goes when, that's set up by the party. And the running of the election, the ballots that you actually get, they tend to be written by the Democratic and Republican parties so that they're considered fair. Both parties sign off on them. So they are responsible for organizing, running elections. They also are responsible in the sense that they hand out all the road signs, the bumper stickers, they get volunteers to come to the polls and help, and to motivate people to get out and to participate in the election. These 2 roles tend to be very similar, and I'm almost going to talk about them as if they're one. Sometimes this last role, so that's the caucus role and the last one, the 5th one, this last one is sometimes referred to as the loyal opposition. Which can sound oxymoronic because you're loyal, but you're opposed. So, if I didn't like President Obama's Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and somebody said to you as an everyday citizen, oh yeah, what are you going to do instead? I would guess most people would say, I don't have any idea how to solve America's healthcare problem. I don't like what Obama's saying, but I don't have an idea, I'm not an expert. That is the job, in this case, of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, acting responsibly, should be presenting responsible alternatives. It says, if you don't like it done this way, try doing it this way. If you didn't like what the Republicans were doing later, then it would be the responsibility of the Democrats to say, you don't like what's happening, vote for us and we'll do it this way instead. So without that alternative choice, it would be almost impossible for a voter, if he was put on the spot, to say, oh yeah, what would you do, unless you're a health policy expert. That's this idea of loyal opposition, or as a watchdog. Notice we have lots of watchdogs in the system, right? The media, interest groups, now parties. Meaning that when I lose the election, I don't get out guns and shoot. I'm still loyal to the Constitution. I'm still loyal to the country. However, that doesn't mean I'm following the policies of these people who won the election. My job is to be in opposition always, to stand for the other side, to present alternative policies. So, presenting alternative policies and acting as a watchdog, the loyal opposition. Last but not least, the role of actually operating the government. This is really where we said the interest groups will differ from political parties. Interest groups want to come in here, meet President Obama, and convince him to do things differently. They're not at all interested in doing the job. On the other hand, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton, all these people are saying, if you elect us, we'll get in there, we'll actually run this thing and we'll make it work. Right? We'll be responsible for doing all the things that have to happen. So the easiest way to think about this is the president says he will enforce the laws of the United States. That's what the executive does. But if you even stop and think about that for a second, it's ridiculous. When is President Obama actually enforcing laws? Well, he doesn't really enforce them. He's got people that do it. Well, where does he get these people? Many of them get nominated. And the president has over 5,000 positions to fill in government. Where on God's green earth are you going to find 5,000 people to fill all these jobs that would sort of behave like you would, right? 5,000 of your closest friends on Facebook. The answer is you go to your party. And if you're looking for somebody to be the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, you're going to know your Secretary of Defense. You're going to pick somebody you know and you can deal with. But the fourth level down, you're going to put out a feeler into the Democratic Party. You're going to say, you know anybody that's a lawyer, good background in defense, might be willing to serve. You're going to get a few names. They're going to get checked, vetted, and eventually he's going to do that. And those people are going to take all these jobs in government, at the Department of Justice, at the Department of Agriculture, at the Department of Defense, and they're going to help to actually run the country. They're going to take responsibility for carrying out all those laws, which therefore at the end of that, the voters should have some ability to vote whether you've done a good job or whether they're interested in checking something with a loyal opposition. Okay, so please be familiar with those 5 roles. When we get back to class, we will do something a little different with those.